If you're watching this, you probably know the feeling all too well. I'm talking about that frustrating moment when you try to eat healthy, but an hour later, your blood sugar meter tells you a completely different story. Does that sound familiar?
It's a feeling of defeat, isn't it? Like you're playing a game you can't win. You follow the rules, but the numbers just don't cooperate. It can feel like a full-time job just managing it all.
Exactly. And one of the biggest sources of confusion is meat. Today, we're going to cut through that confusion. We'll show you which meats might be secretly sabotaging your numbers and what simple swaps can finally help you tame those after-meal spikes.
This is purely educational, not medical advice. Our goal is simple: to make your dinner plate a friendlier place so you can spend less time worrying about your meter and more time enjoying your life. Stay with us.
Then this topic is personal for me. My own Aunt Rosa, who's 63 and lives out in Arizona, called me just last month. She loves her bacon and toast for breakfast, but her glucose monitor was jumping 60 to 80 points within an hour. She felt so discouraged.
And that's the classic scenario. People often think the toast is the only problem, but we're learning more and more about the meat itself. The issue really comes down to the type of meat and how often we're eating it, especially processed and red meat.
Right. There was a major study back in 2011 that really opened our eyes. It found that even daily increases in unprocessed red meat were linked with a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. For processed meats like bacon or sausage, the risk was even higher.
And that finding has been confirmed again and again. Just last year, in 2023, another huge study showed it's almost a straight line. The more red meat you eat, processed or not, the higher the risk. So the big question is, why? What is it about red meat?
Researchers have a few solid theories. One is about the type of iron in red meat called heme iron. Another is the nitrites used in processed meats. And finally, something called AGEs, which are literally what they sound like. They age you, that form when meat is cooked at high temperatures. All of these have been linked to insulin resistance.
So this is real established science. But let's bring it back to your Aunt Rosa. What did you actually do to help her?
It was all about smart swaps, not total deprivation. We didn't tell her she could never have steak again. We kept one small steak night a week. But the big change? We cut out the processed meats, and 3 mornings a week, we swapped in beans or tofu with her eggs and veggies.
And what happened?
The result was incredible. Within just 2 weeks, that morning spike was gone. Her numbers were flatter, more stable, and she wasn't chasing high blood sugar all day. It gave her a sense of control.
That's what it's all about. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. And the American Diabetes Association's latest guidelines support this exact approach: a more plant-forward diet, limiting processed meats, all tailored to you. So Grace, if we're telling people to cut back on meat, the first question I always hear is, but where will I get my protein? Don't I need all 20 amino acids from meat?
It's such a common myth. And we had a viewer, Mr. J from Ohio, 57 years old, ask that exact question. He was worried he'd be weak or hungry without animal protein.
But the truth is, you absolutely do not need animal protein to get all the essential building blocks. The key is getting enough total protein throughout the day and eating a variety of plant foods.
Exactly. A major review in 2019 confirmed that well-planned vegetarian and even vegan diets provide more than enough protein and all the essential amino acids for adults. Your body is smart. It can pull amino acids from different foods you eat all day.
So back to Mr. J. He was having a problem where he'd eat a plant-based dinner, but feel hungry 2 hours later and see his numbers spike in the evening.
Yes, and the solution was to build a better plate. We created a protein rotation for him. Most dinners would feature soy or lentils. We added a handful of nuts for healthy fats and satiety. And once or twice a week, he'd have some oily fish. We'll get to that in a minute. We paired this with tons of non-starchy veggies and a small portion of whole grains.
And what was the result for him?
By the 3rd week, he said his evening cravings were gone. His 1 and 2 hour readings after dinner were flatter, and he did it with no extra medications. He felt more satisfied and in control.
You just mentioned oily fish, Grace, and that's the perfect transition. So many people hear that salmon is a heart health superstar, A viewer, Miss Keisha from Georgia, 55, wants to know, is salmon good for my numbers and my heart?
That's a fantastic question because the answer is a little nuanced. First, for your heart, the answer is a resounding yes. The American Heart Association recommends 2 servings of fish a week, especially oily fish like salmon, because the omega-3s are fantastic for lowering triglycerides.
Okay, so it's great for heart health and triglycerides. But what about blood sugar? What does it do for your A1C?
And that's the key distinction. While some studies show oily fish might help lower the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, large analyses have found that for people who already have diabetes, fish oil supplements don't reliably improve blood sugar control.
So to be clear, eat salmon for your heart, your triglycerides, and as a great source of protein. Don't expect it to be a magic bullet that directly lowers your blood sugar.
Precisely. My cousin Miguel had high triglycerides and was getting that post-dinner bump on his CGM. We simply swapped one of his steak nights for baked salmon with quinoa and broccoli. We made sure he wasn't deep frying it. His triglycerides dropped beautifully, and because the meal was so well balanced, his post-meal curve was much steadier. He just felt better.
All right, Grace, let's tackle another popular one, bone broth. You see it everywhere, touted as this ancient healing miracle. Mr. Peter from Texas, who is 62, asks, is my homemade bone broth good or bad for me?
I love this question because there's so much hype. Let's break down what bone broth really is. At its core, it's a comforting, savory liquid. A cup will give you about 8 to 10 grams of protein, which is nice, but it's not a protein powerhouse. The mineral content is actually quite modest.
And there are two big things to watch out for. The first is sodium. A single cup of store-bought beef stock can have nearly 500 milligrams of sodium. That's a huge portion of your daily limit, especially if you're watching your blood pressure.
The second thing is a bit more surprising: potential contaminants. A few small studies have shown that because bones can store heavy metals, some broths can contain higher levels of lead than the water they were cooked in. It varies a lot, but it's something to be aware of.
Wow. So my mom, who loves a nightly mug of box broth, was seeing her blood pressure nudge up. We switched her to a homemade version with no added salt, skimmed the fat off the top, and packed it with flavor from celery, onions, and herbs.
A perfect solution.
It was. Her sodium intake plummeted, her blood pressure settled, and her evening numbers were steadier. She still got that cozy, comforting feeling, but in a much smarter way. So the bottom line, enjoy bone broth if you like it as a low-sodium, comforting side, not a cure.
So after all this information, we want to leave you with a simple 1-week experiment. A challenge, if you will.
This week, try this. 1. Swap processed or red meat for beans or tofu just twice. 2. Add baked or grilled salmon to your dinner plate just twice. 3. If you enjoy broth, make sure it's low sodium.
That's it. And grab a notebook. Log your 1 and 2 hour post-meal readings after those meals. See what your own meter tells you.
We would love to hear how it goes. Comment below and tell us, which swap gave you the flattest curve? Which protein still gives you trouble?
And ask us your next question. Just leave your first name, age, and state, and we might answer it on our next show. Thank you for joining us and taking charge of your health. We'll see you next time.